what is going on behind the scenes there that none of us at home can see?
Oh,
you know, it's one of the strangest days of my life, I got to tell you. Yesterday was so exciting. Rebel News had 4 out of 17 questions. I was the only Rebel who didn't get a question, but there were wonderful questions by Drea, Sheila, David, and Alexa en français, which I really liked. That was the same number of questions that was asked by CBC, in their French and English divisions. And it was pretty cool that there's a room of over 100 journalists, but Rebel News had 4 questions. And there's no secret to why. We just got in the line and did it. But over the last 24 hours, so much of what I call the regime media, the mainstream media, the legacy media, absolutely freaked out on the Debates Commission. The chair of the Debates Commissioner, the commissioner, as it's called, Michel Cormier, for some reason, he did a media tour. He was on CBC. He was on.
yes.
He did so many interviews, and in every single one, he was basically beaten like a dog by people who said, "How dare you allow those evil rebels?" And there are other citizen journalists here too. Our alumnus Kian Bexty, our friends from Juno, Western Standard. So there's really good people here. It's not just us. I think we're just the best known because we've been around for 10 years. But the Michel Cormier, the commissioner, was so roughed up by the cool kids. How dare you allow those peasants in here? How dare you allow those ruffians at rabble? By the way, the questions were really good. Their work speaks for themselves. So all day he was roughed up, and he was obviously making promises to people, well, I won't let that happen. But on the other hand, the Debates Commission is a government agency, so it's bound by the Charter of Rights. It's bound by basic rules of fairness and fair play. They can't just be whimsical. And they had already agreed to us in writing that they would allow 5 of our people to ask questions, just like, you know, other organizations do. So how do you square that circle? On the one hand, all the cool kids, all the mean girls, all the mainstream media were saying, you can't let them ask any more questions. You've got to do something. But on the other hand, there's the law. 2 court cases in 2019 and 2021 saying you can't treat Rebel News differently than the Toronto Star or the CBC. So insanely, absolutely cray-cray, at the last moment, Michel Cormier, just came into the room, stood exactly where I'm standing now and said, we're calling it off. And I think he said security reasons. And people said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he ran away. He went, obviously, there was no security issue. This is the most locked down police place in Canada right now. There are 100 cops here. There's sniffer dogs. There's SWAT teams. If there really were a security threat, they would have pulled the politicians away. It was their way of cutting the Gordian knot, of stopping Rebel News from asking the questions without breaking the law. But of course, they let down the public. The purpose of the debate is to have a debate and to have journalists scrum the politicians to hold them accountable. Michel Cormier really is a terrible leader, not just because anyone can push him around, but because he failed in his essential mandate to let Canadians see the debate. I guess they saw the debate, and the debate was quite interesting, I thought, but they wouldn't allow any journalists. They would rather burn the place down than allow any questions from Rebel News. Very interesting. And by the way, some of our critics here were positively demonic. There were people shrieking and shaking. And I mean, I'll just give you an example. There's some guy from some outlet called Ricochet, and I don't really know that much about it. But they were saying, you've got 13 people here, and you're controlling Kian Bexty, and you're like, what? I like, for those who don't know, Kian Bexty's an alumnus of our company. He works for the Counter Signal. And I like the guy. Of course, I chatted with him. He's a friend. But my point is, let's take the shut things down. Like, there's just crazy people here. And you know what? A lot of these left-wing ideologues have been radicalized. Like, that's the, like, there was some guy from the Hill Times he was screaming. They were shaking. I was saying, control yourself emotionally. Some of these guys are cuckoo. And it was demonic. And when the worst moment was actually the best moment. It was yesterday when Drea Humphrey asked the question about the anti-Christian crime wave of arson and vandalism against churches. And Drea asked that question so beautifully. And Jagmeet Singh disrespected her, didn't answer the questions, and Drea asked it again, and it was wonderful. The hissing and the heckling. I don't know if it was picked up on the microphones.
No.
It was shocking. It was, and I said to Drea, it's demonic. And it was. Now, I want to say this. I think most of the people in this room are sort of normal. You know, they realize that the news is what the leaders say and that a lot of this stuff is inside baseball. I think most, like I sat next to a friendly lady yesterday, a French journalist who was just a photographer. Today, I sat next to the photographer from the Montreal Gazette. I don't think he's particularly political. He was very friendly. So there are some really normal people in journalism, but holy cow, does it attract the wackadoodles also? And some of those wackadoodles obviously are very persuasive because they literally convinced Michel Cormier to blow the whole thing up. But you know what? That's on them. And
yes,
there was a moment where I was asked to leave the room, and I was told that he wanted to deport me, and I told them that was BS, and they agreed. So they let me back in after about 10 minutes or whatever. And the CBC were so sure I was going to be kicked out, they announced on TV that I had my credentials revoked. They were insane. The CBC made a complaint to the Debates Commission about me, asked them to deport me. I went out, I said, what's all this about? And they told me some story. And I said, that is crazy. And they said, all right. And I went back in, and the CBC, that bald guy, I forget his name, David Cochran, I think. I don't want to get that wrong. I think it's David Cochran. He was so certain that he had managed to get me kicked out that he announced it on TV. Like crazy. So anyway, when I came in, people didn't know what had happened. So I had a little scrum, and I said, look, citizen journalists are here to stay. And you don't have to like it, but it's just how it is. And anyone with a cell phone can be a journalist. I'm not saying you're going to be a great journalist. Some are great, some are not great. But this snobbery, this guild, this protected elite, that's just not real. The most popular podcaster in the English language is Joe Rogan.
Yes.
Because he's so bloody good. And
Yes.
I don't think he went to journalism school. And by the way, the CBC should know that. Peter Mansbridge, I don't even think he got his high school diploma. It doesn't mean the guy's a good question asker. And there's a snobbery here. I feel like I'm in the last vestiges of the regime media. And I got to tell you guys have joined our Rebel News project in recent years, but I was there day one, obviously. And when we started Rebel News 10 years ago, I'll confess to you, I had a bit of an inferiority complex. I thought, I'm amateur, I'm not real, this is a toy, the internet's not serious. Like I just felt like the other guys knew better, did better, were more serious than me. I don't feel that way now. First of all, we actually are bigger than them. I stopped counting our viewership when we hit 2 billion. So I don't feel like we're not big enough. I know I'm as smart as the other guys. I know our journalists are as ethical. So I no longer have this built-in inferiority complex. And by the way, I shouldn't. Think of your favorite journalists around the world. Many of them are internet-based sort of citizen journalists. So I think that's what was going on here. We were in their sacred place. Normally they keep us out, but once every 4 years, like a kind of Halley's Comet, we come around, and they can't stand it. They can't stand it. And I'm not even going to say for one day every 4 years, for 15 minutes. I counted, and the total talk time we had yesterday was 10 and a half minutes, including answers. So we had about 5 minutes of talk time, 10 minutes if you include the answers. That was too much for these people. They broke. To let the peasants in for even 5 minutes broke them.
Well, Ezra, you made an interesting comment too about how they were becoming unhinged, saying, "Oh, you control Cian Bexty," and some of these allegations and these claims. I mean, they say that we peddle myths and disinformation, fringe and conspiratorial. This sounds very conspiratorial.
Oh, it's just crazy. I've never seen it. And here's the thing: no one cares. It was about the 4 politicians who were debating. It wasn't about the intrigues back here. I mean, maybe that's a one-liner. But for these people, it was the essential question. How dare Rebel News be allowed in? How dare Juno News? How dare Cian Bexty be allowed? Like, good Lord, it's not just about the craft. That's what they call journalism, the craft. Yeah, you know what? You're not all that. I don't know. Listen, there's some wonderful people here. I won't lie. And there's a lot of normal people who just came here to do their job. But there are some seriously crazy people. There's some Antifa-style journalists. And I think that's really what happened. And a lot of them have been radicalized. Anyways, that's my report. And I think it was an enormous victory for Rebel News. It's a disaster for Canada
without question.
that this thing
Yes.
was canceled. But Rebel News came and did exactly what we said we would do, which was to ask fearless questions that other journalists wouldn't. Mission accomplished. And the fact that everyone else freaked out is on them, not on us.
Just to bring it back to the 4 leaders, Ezra, if we can get just a couple comments, what some of your takeaways of the debate was, if you could gauge who won, and maybe even perhaps what angle, the questions would have taken if we had have been allowed to answer them, or ask them rather.
Sure. I mean, really quickly, I think that the Bloc Québécois leader, I sort of like him, but what's he doing in an English debate? I mean, I suppose there's some Anglos in Quebec, but it felt a little bit out of place. Jagmeet Singh was just interrupting Pierre Poilievre at every opportunity, just trying to do some damage. It's clear he knows that he doesn't have much of a political future. I think Pierre Poilievre was actually pretty good. He was in his, he felt pretty strong. But Mark Carney he had some stumbles. You can tell he's been out of Canada. He didn't know the difference between the Keystone XL pipeline and the Trans Mountain pipeline, because he hasn't been paying attention to Canada in a decade. But he's formidable. I think it's a close race. I think it's closer now than it was a week ago when the Liberals were in the lead. I'm glad I'm out here, and I don't think I learned as much about the candidates as I learned about the media party. The media party is worse than you know. The media party, they hate me. It's true. But I think they actually hate me in a way because we serve you, the undesirables, the deplorables, the whatever they're calling you, people who aren't with the program. That's why, here's the thing. Let me close on this. Why didn't this place freak out yesterday when the CBC had 4 questions? Why did they freak out when we did? Like, what's the difference? Well, the difference is what we asked. If we had asked the official narrative questions, they wouldn't have minded. They would have cheered us. It was purely a content-based objection.
Yeah. If you would have asked about the carbon tax, there would not have been the outrage. But your energy today. Your energy today, Ezra, couldn't be more different than your energy of last night. I mean, you came out last night just on fire, so excited to have gotten answers to those questions.
Yeah.
That was a massive win for the people of Canada, and it's really unfortunate that the Debates Commission did what they did. But this is going to open a lot of eyes in the country of Canada, and I do believe that the truth will come out. And make no mistake, we're Rebel News. It will.
Yeah. Lise, thank you for those kind words. Tamara, thank you guys for co-chairing this. I'm going to run because I have a few things that we have to do here. And I see some people are leaving, but thanks to all our viewers. That's why we're here. We have to care about our viewers to survive because we're viewer funded. The CBC has to care about one view to survive. And his name is Mark Carney. And that, once you know that, explains so many things.